Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Insights with Experts. Joining us here today, we are very fortunate to have Mr. Dan Swift. Mr. Swift is the current CEO and founder of Empire Selling, and we are absolutely fortunate to have him here today. Dan, how are you?
I'm very well, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Of course. And also with us today, we have Mr. Zain Azri. Zain Azri will be the guest student for this interview. Zain is currently a marketing and management student at Exeter University. Zain, how are you?
Hi, Sean. I'm pretty good, thanks. Thank you for having me here.
Awesome. So, Dan, the first question that we wanted to ask you, this is more or less the question which we like to ask all of our experts when we start off with our interviews. And essentially what that is an insight into your journey. So the current position that you hold now as the CEO of Empire Selling, was this something that you perhaps had in mind for a long time? Or perhaps was this something that you sort of fell into, I guess? And essentially what I'm asking is, what did that road look like from the moment you left onto the moment you are now?
Wow, great question. So it's been something that I've been working on for about 8 years. But up until that point, it certainly wasn't something that I was planning for. So to give everyone a bit of context, the company that I run now, Empire Selling, it's teaching business-to-business sales organizations how to use social media and digital tools to sell. And I knew nothing about that 10 years ago. So when I first graduated from college, I graduated with a geography degree. So who does that? And after I graduated, I literally, unless I wanted to be a geography teacher or do something in that space, my options were kind of limited. And I did it because I just wanted to go to college, experience college, but I had no real plans after college, which might sound ridiculous looking back, but that was literally where I was at. And after I graduated, I actually went traveling around the world. I did about 18 months traveling. I went all over the US and around the Pacific and New Zealand, Australia, through Thailand, Malaysia, everywhere. And loved it. And while I was traveling, I first experienced selling. And I had to make some money to pay for my travels. So I ended up joining a company which was Hella Finance. It's a working capital finance company. And I was calling business owners up, trying to get them to talk to the sales team. That was my job for about 6 months. And loved it, absolutely loved it. And so when I came back to the UK, I went looking for sales jobs. And the first interview I went for, I landed, and I worked for a company called Complinet, which I was there for 12 years. Which is crazy off the back of the first job after really looking for one. And spent 12 years there, had loads of different roles, loads of different leadership positions. And in 2012, I went to LinkedIn. And LinkedIn was the first part of my journey towards when I launched my business, Empire Selling. And I spent 3 years at LinkedIn. I launched a business unit for LinkedIn, which was the Sales Solutions Group, which was teaching again, sales organizations, how to use LinkedIn specifically. And we launched a product called LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which a lot of salespeople use around the world. Like millions of salespeople now use it. So it's kind of cool looking back that was part of my legacy, I guess. And so nearly 3 years at LinkedIn. While I was there, I realized that a lot of the people who were buying the product, Sales Navigator, they needed a methodology, a sales program, they needed training, and LinkedIn just didn't do that. So I started back in 2012, 13-ish, writing and creating training materials for a business that I was going to launch in the future. I just didn't know exactly when it would be. After LinkedIn, I spent 3 years at Sprinkler, which is a massive social media management technology company. When I joined, it was valued at about $300 or $400 million, something like that. And 3 years later, we got it to $2 billion. So it's a pretty significant growth. And I learned so much during that 3-year period. But again, in the back of what I was building, evening classes, weekends, I was teaching people how to use social media and digital. So I kind of had a side hustle, which was Empire. And the side hustle became a bit too big to be a side hustle. So in 2017, I asked my wife if it was okay if I quit my job as a divisional vice president of one of the fastest growing software companies in the world and go and launch my own company. And that is what I did in January 1st, 2018. So yeah, that's been my journey. It wasn't something I was thinking about doing after college at all, but 2012 is when it started at LinkedIn.
Cool. I recently read this book. I think it was a few months ago. It's called Shoe Dog, and it's essentially a memoir
Mm-hmm.
by Phil Knight, the founder of
Uh-huh.
Nike. And essentially, what he does is after university, I think it was exactly like you. He tells his parents that he wants to like hop on a plane, and he goes to the complete other end of the world, and he visits the Himalayas. He visits all these places that he wouldn't actually.
Yeah.
If you would have told him a year ago, he would say what? No, but
Yeah.
it's I guess it's that kind of thing that we've also heard a lot from other experts as well, whereby it's not necessarily just what you can learn from a book or
Mm-hmm.
reading an article. So it's essentially what you experience as well. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's you know
It's so true. And the experience I had, I was 21, 20, probably 22 when I was traveling around the world. And I met so many people from so many different countries, so many different cultures. I worked in Sydney and Australia for a while. And it definitely shaped my outlook on life because some of the people that I grew up with back in England, they didn't do that and they chose not to or couldn't afford to or whatever it was or just didn't want to. And they just where their journeys in life went a completely different direction. And I think because of that, I traveled. That's why I now live in the US. I'm not obviously from the US, but I've been here 16 years and it's very much home. I think if I hadn't have traveled, I probably would still be, I'd be living and working in England for sure.
So, as part of your entire journey from your sales job, your traveling in the US, and then founding Empire Selling, what do you think were some of the biggest challenges you faced, and perhaps the steps you took to overcome these challenges?
It's a great question. Wow. I think for me, so I got into leadership at a very young age. So, relatively speaking, now I'm 43 now. And I got my first leadership role probably I was 24, 25, looking after a sales team of 20 people. And I knew nothing about sales leadership at all. I'd only had examples of what other people had done as sales leaders that in the teams that I worked in. So I just read loads of books and I tried to just figure it out. And the thing that was interesting for me was that looking back was I managed and I tried to lead sales teams in a way in which I would want to be led. And it didn't work because everyone's unique, right? Every human being on the planet is different. Everyone looks at the world differently. So in the early days, I was not a good leader of people at all. And over time, I learned more and more about the human nature of people and compassionate leadership and getting to know people before you even try and lead them. And that was something that I've learned over time is like really focus on the people that are around you and what do they want from life? What do they want from business? What do they want from the experience working at Empire? Because it's not their end game. None of the people that work at Empire are going to be here forever, right? They've all got what they want to get out of it before they move on to the next thing. So the biggest thing for me was learning about people, learning how to put them first, and then the business would just follow. Because if people feel as though they're on a journey with you and they feel as though that they're understood and their leadership is support whatever their goals are, then they'll run through walls for you. So that was probably my biggest learning: get to know the people.
the next question which we would like to ask you. So we would just like you to imagine for a second that you were our age, and what
Mm-hmm.
we're saying is, you've just left school and you're about to head off
Mm-hmm.
into the world. What do you think is one thing that you would do differently from the first time that happened when
Mm-hmm.
you were actually your age?
Wow, that's a great. Kind of wish I was your age again. It'd be awesome. What would I do differently? I think there's a couple of things. I think I wouldn't, despite the traveling, I would absolutely do the traveling again for sure. When I came back from traveling and I started working, I definitely took work. You should take it seriously. I took it too seriously. So much so where I feel like in hindsight, looking back, I could have had way more fun in my 20s and balanced it as well as being successful in business. I absolutely could have done. But I look back and the number of weekends that I would go into the office and work on a Saturday when all my friends, all my buddies were, doing other stuff and going out, for drinks and doing whatever it was that they did. And it's not that I didn't, but I don't feel as though I did as much as I could have had more fun. Now, some people, when I've answered that question before and explained that, people have said, well, would you have been as successful as you've been if you'd have taken that attitude, that approach? Don't know, but is it a regret? Yeah, a little bit. So I think for me, it's life is a long journey. You have time, enjoy it, and even if you're struggling to figure out what you want to do with your life, it's okay. You're not going to get it right straight away, so don't worry about that. If you think you know what you want to do, fantastic, you're blessed. Like, not many people do. But when you start doing it, if you feel as though it's not what you wanted it to be, don't worry, it's fine. Like, fingers crossed, life's a long journey, and it's fine, you'll figure it out. I was chatting to my wife about this evening, and she said the other thing I would on her behalf, I would recommend to people listening to this is be open to opportunities, open to conversations, opening to experiences. If someone says you have an opportunity to go and work in another country, don't dismiss it. Like, look into it, think about it, experience it, because it's amazing who you meet in life. And I live by one simple rule, so simple, that everything happens for a reason. So, if I mess up a meeting, if I mess up an interview, if I don't do a good sales pitch, if I don't win a customer, it happened for a reason. It wasn't meant to be. So give yourself a little bit of a break at your age. It's okay. You got time.
Cool. So everyone will now be switching over to Zain Azri. Zain, all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So my first question, Dan, I guess it kind of relates back to what you were talking about in terms of your leadership and your sort of your history with being in the leadership positions.
Mm-hmm.
So as the CEO of your own company, of Empire Selling, how closely connected would you say you are with your teams? Or I guess another way to put that is, what's the sort of the relationship dynamic that you have with all of your employees, or the teams in your company?
Yeah. So I'm fortunate right now because we are definitely boutique, right? So it's a small company, and I know the people that work at my company really, really well. I've worked with them all previously in previous roles. So the leadership team, I've worked with them now for 5 or 6 years. So I know them really, really well. But because we're boutique, that's okay. At bigger companies where I've worked at before, LinkedIn is a great example, where at the time there's about 5,000 employees, and Jeff Weiner was the CEO of LinkedIn at the time, and he would run an all hands call every 2 weeks, and all 5,000 employees or whoever was available would join these calls, and he would talk very openly about how the business was doing, events that were taking place, big initiatives that the company had, and he was very transparent, and I love that. So from my experience, I've seen where leaders can, if they choose to, really engage with the people and the employees at their company in a way very human, very transparent, very thoughtful way, and genuinely get to know their people. Through their leadership teams, if it is 5,000 employees, you can still get to know your people through the leadership team. But it's critical, and a lot of CEOs, sadly, they still don't realize that if you don't have an employee base that want to be at the company and are challenged and like the leadership and believe in the leadership, they're going to leave. So, I think any leaders listening to this have just got to start thinking more about the people that work at their companies.
Nice. So do you think that I guess that relationship dynamic has sort of like changed quite a bit since you first started at Empire Selling compared to now?
Within this organization or just generally?
Within this organization, yeah.
Yeah, so for us, we're small, right? So for us, it's very easy. It's very easy for me to know my people. And anyway, I think the bigger challenge for me now is as we grow as an organization and we start bringing new people into the business, and then we start really scaling the people, how do you keep knowing your people as well as you do when you've got a small employee base? And I think about that a lot. And for me, it's communication. It's making sure that you have lines of communication open all the time. So the Jeff Weiner example at LinkedIn, I think, is a great one, where it's in your calendar. There's a leader. You talk to your people on a regular cadence, but you also be approachable. I think that's the other thing. I think too many leaders are worried about showing vulnerability, or worried about not knowing the answers, or worried about how they're perceived by their people. And if they show some vulnerability, they think that's weakness. I think that's a strength, because we're all human. We're all completely flawed. Like, none of us are perfect. So as leaders, you just got to be your true self, and people will love you for that. They'll respect you for it. But leaders get scared, grown-ups get scared, adults get scared, whatever you want to call us, and they don't want to show that vulnerability, which I think is a miss.
Do you think like so I guess in that aspect, you mentioned being, I guess, sort of afraid, scared, nervous about that kind of stuff. Do you think those nerves actually, I guess, do they improve, or do you develop nerves of steel as you get more experienced in your leadership role in that area?
You definitely get more experience in terms of situational awareness. So because I've been doing this for 20 plus years and been in business, leading teams, whatever it's been, you kind of find yourself where today, if something happens tomorrow, I've probably experienced it before and I know how to respond. So that just comes with time. That just comes with experience. I still get nervous before every single event, even with you guys, you still get a little bit of anxiety before this, and that's a good thing because it shows you care, right? If you didn't get nervous, that shows that you don't really care about what you're doing, and it doesn't matter to you what the end result is. So that you should feel that. I talk a lot very openly about anxiety and depression, which I think is a massive issue that people don't talk openly about. I've suffered with anxiety and depression for 10 plus years. Like literally had counseling and all sorts of stuff. And a lot of people don't talk about it openly because they're worried that it's some sort of like negative thing. It's made me the best possible father, the best business professional I can be. I know myself so well, which allows me now to go and help other people do what they want to do in life, So yeah, I think there's a lot that people can do more if they want to.
Sorry, do you mind if I ask you about that sort of period in your life when you're going through that anxiety?
Sure, yeah, please.
So was that during your time at Empire Selling? Or was that before?
Oh no, when I still suffer now, it never goes away.
Right.
So yeah, no, it's all good. I mean, it's not like even a thing. This is something that will be with me for life. And so many other people like have it. They just don't talk about it openly. Like if you read a lot of stuff on LinkedIn right now, it's beginning to become okay for people to talk about it. I talk about it publicly because there's a data point out there. It's something like, I think it's 8 out of 10 people, at least in the US, have it or have undiagnosed anxiety or depression. So the more we talk about it openly, the better it'll be for folks to feel okay and go seek help and all that kind of stuff. I've probably had it looking back through my life, probably early teens, I would say, all the way to where I am now, and still every day. It's it gets easier with time because I've had 10 years of counseling and therapy. But again, to me, that's not a weakness. To me, if I hadn't have done that, then I wouldn't have combated it to a point where I'm now reasonably successful in business, and I know myself really well. And people say they love working for me because I treat them like human beings, right? And maybe I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't have, taken the therapy and the counseling. So, yeah, it's not a weakness; it's a strength.
That's pretty fair, I guess. So considering how long you've been sort of going through that, and when you started your life in business, did it really have a massive impact on sort of how you worked and your performance and that stuff?
Definitely. So in hindsight, I think the anxiety kept me on my toes and still does, because you prepare so well for situations that you're going to be in, and you do it to manage the anxiety. So in sales, it's fantastic because you're preparing for a massive customer meeting or a prospect meeting, whatever it is, and you're so well prepared to make sure that you don't experience the anxiety when you're actually having that meeting. It's been an incredible strength for me. I think what's the best way of describing it? Would I have taken the jump to become my own business owner and launch a company and all that sort of stuff if I hadn't have gone to therapy? No way, no way. I'd still be working for someone else at another company, doing whatever I was employed to do, selling whatever they wanted me to sell, and I wouldn't have had the strength to go and do this. This, like I say, it allows you to know what the issues are that are driving the depression or the anxiety, whatever it is, deal with it mentally, put all sort of coping techniques and mechanisms in place, and then you look at your life and you go, I could be doing something better than this, and then you got the strength to go do it. So yeah, if I hadn't done all of that and hadn't worked on myself and hadn't gone into counseling, not that there's anything wrong with it, I probably would have been a sales person at a company selling something, which is, that's fine, but I wouldn't have done this. No way.
Wow. What if there was another person, a younger person who was sort of in the similar situation as you were at the time, just I guess starting in their professional careers or in business? What sort of piece of advice would you give them to sort of start trying to overcome it and just adapt to it?
Overcome depression, anxiety specifically?
Okay, maybe overcome's a bit much, but I guess what piece of advice would you give them to help for them to push on, especially when work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first of all, you've got to get over, you've got to accept that you might need to get some help. That's the first thing, and that in itself can be really hard for a lot of people. And taking that step to go and talk to someone, whether it's in the COVID climate, remotely, and talk to an expert on some sort of Zoom or something equivalent, or go and see someone in person, but go seek help. And it's absolutely fine to go do that. There's nothing wrong with it. And talking about your problems. I remember the first session I had, and I cried for 45 minutes. We didn't talk, and then I left. It was the best session ever. It's great. So it's absolutely cool to go do that. And I would, empower anyone who's not feeling good about life, or maybe they don't even know they've got anxiety or depression. They're just terrified about what the future holds for them, in life, in business. Like, did they pick the right thing at college? Are they stressed out with their studies? Are they, do they know what they want to be when they graduate? Are they getting pressure from their families to go in different directions? Like, whatever it is, if you're feeling like it's like overwhelming, go talk to someone. Go find an expert and go talk it out. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. It will fast track your success. I guarantee it in business and life if you go address it with a professional sooner rather than later.
Nice. My next question is probably just gonna be more focused on your company, I guess. So considering that what your company focuses on is sort of a pretty specific and I guess specialized service to other companies. I'd like to ask, what sort of aspects do you focus on when marketing your services? So I guess what I mean by that is sort of what are the unique selling points that you're trying to highlight to your consumer audience, and sort of maybe what like social medias or like what mediums you use to advertise yourselves on?
Yeah, for sure. So we're teaching, first of all, companies, so corporations, right? And we sell annual programs and pretty expensive annual programs. They're not cheap. There's a lot of value there, but they're not cheap. And we're teaching salespeople how to use social media and digital tools. So the companies that we sell to, they're big companies like American Express, MasterCard, SAP, big German software companies. These are big companies, and we're training hundreds of people at a time on Zoom or whatever it might be. So as a boutique company, we're not looking to go sell to 1,000 companies tomorrow. That's not our business model. Our business model is to very strategically identify 4 or 5 big companies every year, go and sell to them, and then renew them every year. So our customer base will grow very slowly, but in a very measured way, but a very predictable business model. So we don't need to go and advertise our company on social media. We actually just go sell to someone like SAP, and SAP is a huge organization, and they know all the leaders that we sell to. They know all of their peer group at other companies, and they recommend us to all these peer groups. So we haven't prospected, we haven't marketed our business, we haven't really done anything, and our business is pretty successful, which is crazy, but it's worked because what we sell, our product, our training product, has been really successful. It's made people very productive and successful in the roles that they're in, and the return on the investment these companies make is very clear. So our reputation has become very strong in the space that we're in, and we now just get referred into people. So we still have to sell it, we still have to explain what it is, and we still have to sell it, but we don't have to prospect into companies to get conversations.
When you guys first started out, how difficult did you find, or maybe how easy did you find it to actually sort of settle you guys selves into your market? And like, how long do you think it took for you to get to this point, to this level of success that you're at right now?
So the first year of the business was me. The second year we brought in some key people, and then the third year we're just about to move into that first real stage of significant growth, I think. So the best way of describing it is, because I'm now 43 and I've connected on LinkedIn with every single person every single day that I've had any form of meaningful business or personal interaction, and I share content on LinkedIn a lot. So if you're following me on LinkedIn, you'll see the kind of stuff that I put out there. And I've become known over time because I'm 43. I've been doing this for a while, so I've got myself a bit of a name. So when I first launched the business, a lot of the people who buy what we buy are sales leaders or marketing leaders, and they knew me. So when I announced on LinkedIn that I was going to go do this, people reached out and said, "We'll buy it," and they didn't even know what it is that I was doing, but they wanted to work with me. And that's a product of what I said earlier on in this conversation, of treating people as human beings, being a good human being to a lot of good other human beings over time. And when I launched this, people just wanting to work with me in some capacity. So the takeaway for me, for people listening today, is not a brag. It's just be nice to people, be kind to people, work to make other people successful. And whenever you're ready to go do something like this, people will support you. They will come and help you. They'll want to see you be successful, but only if you're good people to them.
So would you say that having good relationships with people outside of work has a lot of direct positive impact on your work performance?
Oh my goodness, yeah, absolutely. So much so, even little things where, like when we want to launch an ebook, for example, we did one recently on marketing, on digital marketing. I was able to just look at my, and I'll send you it actually, by the way, based on this conversation. But as we started producing it, and I was thinking, well, who are the chief marketing officers at companies that we could ask for quotes and interviews and that sort of stuff? Went onto LinkedIn, looked through them, reached out to about 20 chief marketing officers. All of them came back and said, yes, we'd love to be part of it. Only because every time I'd worked with them in my career, at LinkedIn, at Thomson Reuters, at Complinet, at Sprinkler, wherever it's been, I was just nice. I got my work done. I was respectful. I worked hard. I delivered for them. But I was just a nice human being. And people remember that, you know? So my wife always says, whenever I answer this question, she just says, yeah, you play it down a little bit. I'll give you an example. Like when interns joined any company I've ever worked with, I've said to the head of HR, if they want to do a session with me, a monthly session, whatever it is, and just talk to me about anything, I'll do it. So these interns now, I've been in this for 20 years. Fast forward, those interns are not interns anymore. They're very successful in business, and they remember that kind of, gesture, and they want to support you. So just be nice to people. It's not difficult,
So I guess continuing off of what you were saying about your relationships outside of work, I guess this next question is kind of the opposite of what I asked previously. So did you personally have any sort of experience where you couldn't really deal with a specific person or maybe a specific group of people, and has that affected your work?
So have I struggled to work with certain people in my career?
Yeah, because of
Yeah,
because of, I don't know, you don't like
of
them very
course.
much, or you don't like or they don't like you very much. I don't know.
I mean, listen, we're all unique individuals, right? We're all different human beings. There's no way it's possible that you're always going to gel with every single person in the world. It's just not going to happen, right? The approach that I've taken in the second part of my career to date, so let's say the last 10 years, is most of the time, people who are hard to work with, there's a reason behind it. So I always say this, but you don't know what's going on outside of work. You don't know what they're going through personally. There's one story, is a perfect example where there was a gentleman who was really tough to work with. I'll leave names out and companies out, but a gentleman who's really hard to work with, who was a cross-functional partner of mine in a previous company. And every single meeting we ever had, he would always like question every single thing I said or any decision I'd make. He would always like, well, why are we doing that? That doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. Why are we doing that? All the time. So a lot of people would have that could have turned into a real combative situation. Instead of doing that, at the end of the meeting, I said, hey, do you mind if you just stay behind for a minute? I just want to chat to you about a couple of things. Everyone left the room. And I asked him a simple question. I said, are you okay? Like, is everything okay with you? And he looked so like, whoa. And it turned out he was actually going through a divorce. And he was so unhappy and he was having a really hard divorce. And, he opened up to me and he actually apologized and said, I know why you're asking me as well. And I have been a bit of I'm not going to use the word to you. And I apologize. And it's not you, it is me. There's a lot going on. And so most of the time, maybe it's just the way I look at the world. Maybe going back to the conversation we had about the anxiety, the depression, the counseling, I always look for the best in people. And oftentimes there is something else happening. Sometimes people just don't like you. That's just whatever it is, despite me trying to be a good person. Some people don't like the fact that I am a good person. They don't like that. And that really annoys them, right? So, but whatever it is, the bottom line is you got to try and find out what it is that's stopping that person from wanting to work with you collaboratively or whatever it is. And sometimes the easiest way of doing it is just doing it in a very direct way, but like letting, with a question like, is everything okay? Something like that.
Wow, I wasn't really expecting that one bit, but yeah. Cool. So I think you mentioned that you spent some time playing rugby, or was it rugby league?
Yeah, I played both actually. I played union and league. Yeah, I played both.
Nice. So do you think that there's been anything or any skills that you have learned specifically from your time playing rugby that has shaped you to be the CEO of Empire Selling?
Definitely, without a doubt, and also outside of just the CEO of Empire Selling as a human, for sure. So, as playing rugby, have you ever played at all, or do you play?
Yeah, I played in school and I played for a club as well.
Nice. So you'll know then when you play rugby, you train hard, right? And as one of the most physical sports you can play. By the way, your body's going to hurt in 20 years' time, just as a heads up. But it's one of the most physical sports you can play. And I remember every single game, you're going to battle basically every single game you play. And some teams, might have a couple of star players, but they won't have success. They won't win every single match with a couple of star players. And I equate that to any team I've ever built or any company that I've been part of, and definitely when I'm building an empire, is you hire people to different positions because they're experts in those positions, right? Same as a rugby team. Everyone in the rugby team has a role to play. and they have a defined set of skills, and they get into that team because of the role that you need them to play in that team. So without a doubt, my experience playing rugby, I look for, and also you have to trust those people to do their roles right on the field to be successful. So you apply that to business, and yeah, every single team I've ever run, the team I run now at Empire, I've picked those people, and we all play our roles, and I let them get on with it, and I don't get in their business because they're experts at what they do, and they'll come and find me, they'll ask my opinion on things as the CEO, of course, but I trust them to go do it, and it's exactly the same as rugby. And I think the other thing as well, and I think you could equate this to any team sport at all, it's a team sport, right? So you're not going to have success trying to do anything alone. You're not. I got a lot of different skills that I've accumulated over 20 years, but I'm not an expert marketer. I'm not an expert, PR person. I certainly am not an expert, doing administrative stuff. I'm terrible at it. So you just let the people that you hire to do their jobs, and don't come over the top and be in their business. Just let them do their jobs.
Cool. So actually, when I was playing in school, when we were in year 12, I was just So I guess rugby season was sort of like between November and February, and I was still 16 at the time. But because we didn't have too many guys in year 13 who actually played, me and another friend of ours in our year, we had to be co-captains for first team that year, and that was sort of like the first time I'd ever been in a sort of like, I guess, significant leadership role. And like, yeah, I guess as you would expect from a fairly young and I guess unskilled team at the time, things often really didn't go our way, and a lot of us got really frustrated. When you got into those sort of situations while playing sport and during your work, how would you say the approaches you used to I guess to try solve that were similar in your time playing rugby and in Empire Selling?
Totally. So fortunately, I was the captain too. So for both codes, so I played union through school, high school. I was playing league for a club while I was at high school, and then at university I played league. And then after I graduated, I played league till about the age of 28-ish. I think it's something like that. And with most of the clubs and teams I ever played for, I actually was the captain or the vice captain of one of those teams. And I remember being on the field in so many situations, and everything was going against us, and we would be stacks of points down. And as a leader, it's our responsibility to be so cool, so calm, so collected, so boringly predictable. So when people, you're in those situations, they look to you, and if you look ruffled and completely kind of out of control, so will they, and the score will get even worse, right? So it's the same in business. We have days every single day in business where, if you can imagine that graceful swan on the top of a lake, and the business empire looks so graceful, and my legs underneath are like, oh my God, right? It's that kind of scenario. And it's the same in both sport and in business. People look to you as the leader to be just cool, to be calm, to be collected, to be thoughtful, to be approachable if people have ideas about solving the situation that you're in, and be very, I said boringly predictable. That's a good thing. So they know they can always come to you. And you've got to be one version of Dan Swift every single day. If there's like 10 different versions and people don't know what you're going to get when you're going to ask you, they're not going to come to you because they don't know what kind of response you're going to get. So it's the same on the rugby field as it is in business. It's just be cool, just be level. Just you've got a playbook. We've got, on the field, you've got a playbook in business. Go execute against it. Let everyone play the roles on the field. Let everyone play the roles, of the company. There's so many similarities.
Cool. This doesn't have anything to do with what I asked before, but do you prefer league or union?
I love it. So I actually prefer league. I preferred playing league. I prefer watching league. I find union. I love both of them. I find union just a little bit too stop-starty. I love watching State of Origin games, by the way. Like, that is the pinnacle of rugby league for me. That is, yeah, I get up in the middle of the night to whatever's happening the next day to watch those games live. It's normally like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning for me. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Cool. Yeah, that was just to entertain myself, really.
Yeah, man, absolutely. What else you got?
No, I think we're going into sort of like maybe 10 minutes left of, I guess, our scheduled time. So,
Sure.
Sham, do you think it's time to pass it back to you guys?
So we end off each interview with a question, and that is then, if you had one piece of advice you would give to the youth listening, what would that one piece of advice be?
I think a lot of people might be listening to this or watching this feeling some degree of pressure or expectation, either from themselves or families or whatever it is, about what am I going to do? And you might already be on that path, listening or watching to this, based on what you're studying right now. Or if you're listening to this and you're not even at college yet, I would just breathe. Just breathe. Like, fingers crossed. So, like, life will be a long one, and there's going to be lots of turns, lots of twists, lots of highs, lots of lows. But you got time, So whatever you're doing, do it with passion. Like, whatever you're studying right now, go in 100%. And if you're not prepared to go into 100%, you're probably not doing the right thing, and that's okay. And then whatever the future holds, I said it earlier on in the call. There's going to be times where you feel a lot of pressure in business, in life, whatever it might be, and just find a way to give yourself a bit of a break mentally, physically. Go exercise, go train, like, do something, but get that balance right. And again, it's not a dress rehearsal. So whatever you're doing, just do it with passion.
Thanks for listening in. This podcast has been brought to you by Desire, a platform designed to bridge the gap between the youth and professionals. You can read more about us at desire.org. And you can also check out the section titled Insights with Experts, where you can submit your questions that you might have for future experts and industries that you would like to learn more about. And you can also refer in any experts that you might know yourself.